AVGN. Some call me Johnny. Both talented and professional video game reviewers. Both continue to make content to this very day. Both have inspired and entertained so many people. So why do I keep making videos that challenge their opinions?
Because you feel like it?
Ah! Oh, it's just Tropical Poptart.
The one and only.
Hey, wait a minute. What are you doing here?
I'm waiting for you to make up for your attempted murder.
I already let you help me with an entire review.
Yeah, and I heard you're making 2 others.
Okay, trust me, you do not want to play Mortal Kombat 2.
Oh, come on, it's gotta be better than the first game, it's a sequel.
Do you want to bet?
$5.
Alright, fine. Let's explain to the audience whether or not Mortal Kombat 2 is a good sequel. The last game had a canon ending where Liu Kang killed Goro, defeated Shang Tsung, and saved Earthrealm. In this game, Shang Tsung has returned to the Outworld to give Shao Kahn the less than stellar news. Furious about having to start the 500-year process again and the loss of Prince Goro, Shao Kahn ordered Shang Tsung to be executed. However, the sorcerer came up with the idea of hosting a new single tournament in Outworld. Pleased with the new discovery, Shao Kahn de-aged Shang Tsung. Now you, as the player, have to defend Earthrealm once again, except you're fighting in a backwards world, and just as Eminem said, you only have one shot, so do not miss your chance to blow. This is an interesting idea for a plot. It explains why the tournament gameplay comes back, and it allows us to observe new settings and characters. There's just one issue. Once again, no plot detail is given to the player. Well, this isn't the biggest problem in the world, as the story doesn't affect the enjoyment of a fighting game, but this is an excellent bit of foreshadowing for things to come. You'd expect a sequel to improve on trivial problems like this, but nope. And do you know what makes this even worse?
What?
There is a fan hack edition of this game with a cutscene at the start that explains everything. Even an amateur fan can fit this kind of stuff in ROMs. Why couldn't Midway?
Maybe you need to wait at the title screen.
No, because no matter how long you wait, the game only shows demo fights. This was a simple, easy-to-fix problem that the developers made no effort to fix, which again represents the game pretty well. But that's for later. Let's talk about something good, like, I don't know, the general presentation. Mortal Kombat 1 had digitized graphics based on real-life actors and costumes. This allowed the game to look realistic for the time and made it unique. This game continues that trend, but with 10 cents extra polish. The animations of the characters are a lot smoother, and the costuming has gotten more detail. I mean, it's not that hard to add more detail than just a guy in black pants, but still. These looks are iconic. The ninja outfits in particular are the definitive looks for the ninja characters to me. Additionally, the developers continued a graphical theme throughout the entire game, similar to the last game. However, instead of an Asiatic theme, Mortal Kombat 2 has a sinister theme. Each arena looks foreboding, and the slightly improved graphics make it harder to tell that each location is pixelated.
Just to butt in here, but I'll make a point to say although the detail is higher, I almost feel it is to be expected. With time, technology advances, and it's only reasonable to expect higher quality graphics and whatnot. I think it's great, but never should we give too much credit for doing the bare minimum.
Do you know what didn't do the bare minimum? The music. Each location is a theme with 3 variations. While the variations can feel a little repetitive, the tracks are still catchy and fit the tone of a game based around violence. The only thing that lessens the quality of the soundtrack overall is the fact that some of the loops can be pretty short. Okay, so some things are starting to look up for the game. Maybe Some Call Me Johnny and the AVGN knew what they were talking about. maybe it's a great sequel, right? Just kidding, the gameplay is degraded to a bowl of liver-flavored onions.
Ew.
Well, I'm sorry, but when something smells, I have to be the one to let everyone know that it smells. And it really sucks to say, too, because from a fundamental standpoint, the gameplay hasn't even changed all that much. You still choose your difficulty, your character, your continue number, and how long you want to drink tequila. And the gameplay is still based around the ladder system, and the goal of each fight is still to bring your opponent's health bar down to 0. So theoretically speaking, Mortal Kombat 2 should only be about as bad as the first game was. So for me to claim that it's a downgrade, there have got to be a few changes that make the game worse. And there are some changes to the game, but not all of them are inherently bad. One good difference is that you can now have up to 30 continues in one tournament run, which sort of counterbalances any issues with difficulty, at least on paper. Not only that, but there are now 12 playable characters instead of 7, and the returning characters still retain their move button combinations from the first game, which makes the learning curve less steep.
Now hold on, this review wouldn't be memey enough unless we listed the characters.
Okay. Welcome to the super amazing character roster listing moment! Liu Kang, an Asian. Nicolas Cage, a narcissist. Thor, a Thunderman. Scorpion, an arachnid. Frozone, a guy with an ice-cold heart. Kung Pao, an orange chicken. Mark Zuckerberg, a Komodo dragon in a suit. Edgy teenage girl, an edgy teenage girl. Barack Obama, a level 5 super god. Kitana, a sword. Shang Tsung, a soulless mailman. And Jax, Cyborg Lives Matter. Never let your memes be dreams! Okay, with that out of the way, there are some steps that the developers took to make this game a little easier. Unfortunately, these efforts are compounded by the two constant issues of the early Mortal Kombat games: difficulty and boredom. Let's start with the difficulty. Firstly, the new characters have moves of their own, and once again, the game makes no effort to teach you about them, the new moves of the returning characters, or the fatalities. Oh, and by the way, this game doesn't have a pause button. My favorite letter is Y!
Okay, all joking aside, why couldn't there have been a pause button? The start button does have a function, and the pause menu could have been used to display a move list for whatever character you play as.
Even I could do something that simple on my phone using a simple pixel art app. Looky here. Now, obviously it's not perfect, it doesn't showcase all of Liu Kang's moves, but still, that's more effort than what Midway put into the home ports of this game. Like, if someone with as little artistic talent as me could do something and create something that would improve a game so much, then what's the excuse for a professional game developer? On top of that, some of the moves are surprisingly difficult to input. Maybe this is because we're playing on computers, but sometimes I swear I would input something exactly and it still wouldn't happen. But none of these objective problems really matter all that much, because now we have the capability to look up movesets and get good at playing the keyboard. And we can use dirty continues and play on the lowest difficulty. However, all of these measures are insufficient to accommodate for the unexpected rise in difficulty. Like, the opponents move quite a bit faster than they did in the last game, and they keep spamming the same moves over and over again. The last game did this too, but the difference is that the AI always seems to know our next move before we even make it. Also, fuck this throw attack! No, seriously, I mean it. Every single character in the game just spams the throw attack, and it only gets worse as you go further and further up the ladder. Here's the thing, everyone in the game spams some kind of attack, and I wouldn't have a problem with the throw attack if the player could, I don't know, do it as well. The game doesn't do anything to teach you how to use the attack itself, and even if you have access to the internet It's really hard to find any website that says, oh, this is how the throwing mechanic works in Mortal Kombat 2 Genesis Edition. Seriously. And the worst part is that it's so overpowered and it does so much damage, and every single time you try to debate someone into coming into a trap, like they get to walk towards you and you uppercut them or something like that, they just reverse debate you. And yes, I did just reference your second episode with Shook Red Tropical Poptart, shut up! Across my entire playthrough, I only have one clip of me actually doing the throw attack, and that was on complete accident. Meanwhile, I have a lot of clips of people just throwing me across the room over and over again. And the worst part is that there isn't any single way to actually counter it reliably. Sometimes they can even grab you in midair when you're doing like a flying god attack with Raiden. And that is ridiculous, funny, and frustrating all at the same time. And if you don't believe me when I say I have a ton of clips, here you go. Yes, the 30 continue max does accommodate this slightly, but you'd be surprised how quickly you can lose all of your continues when you're stuck in a rut.
Katana?
Katana. Unlike the last game, it doesn't matter how much you spam your moves. If you come across certain characters in the latter parts of the ladder, see what I did there, you're screwed. Remember how I said in the last review that there was only one overpowered playable character? Well, too bad, because this game has 5. But what truly cements this game as a bad game to me is the fact that it does nothing. Absolutely nothing to solve the series' greatest problem. Arcade syndrome. Those of you with a keen eye will have noticed that in the thumbnail of the last review, there was text reading, a classic case of arcade syndrome. For those not in the know, arcade syndrome is when a game's core mechanics are so basic or simple that playing the game for more than a few minutes can feel kinda boring. It is called arcade syndrome because this is a problem with many arcade games. They're meant to be played in bite-sized increments depending on how many quarters you've got. At least, originally. When you play arcade games for long periods of time, they can feel kinda repetitive. Not every arcade game suffers from this, but most do. Additionally, a game doesn't have to be released in an arcade originally to have arcade syndrome. I'd say that Fortnite has arcade syndrome, which is why it kept getting new content. If it didn't, it would have died off soon due to repetitive game modes, lacking maps, uninteresting weapons, and an atmosphere that mostly consists of the player running across a large map over and over again trying to find people to kill. Anyway, last time this was Tropical Poptart's main argument, so I'm gonna hand the mic over to him for a little bit, okay?
The fights are painfully repetitive. Let's start with the fights themselves. They begin with you and another character on the ladder. That other character proceeds to spam moves, in which case you must do the same or you will lose. Then you either die for the millionth time and check your keyboard or controller, or you win and move on to yet another fight just like it, if not harder as you move up the ladder. The only thing really separating these fights are location, music, and character. Gameplay pans out exactly the same every time, and unlike the first game where the repetitive gameplay was broken up by a mini-game, test your might, this game has no more content than a bag of beads. It's just what it is and nothing special. As a final point, there is nothing in place of the monotony-breaking minigame, as if they didn't even try to combat the horrible gameplay.
And that's a real shame, because the only minigame in Mortal Kombat 1 was Test Your Might. I would have loved to see more minigames. Perhaps they could have used my idea from last time, that being that once your score goes over a certain number, you get to continue. All we're saying, at the end of the day, is that no matter how you slice it, this game isn't very enjoyable by modern standards. At best, you'll be bored, and at worst, you'll be feeling frustrated and start questioning whether or not you like Mortal Kombat to begin with. I mean, who spends time programming worthless red tokens under health bars instead of programming a fun game? Now, we could just end the review here, because pretty much everything we've said so far does a good job of summarizing the experience that is this game, but we've still got to talk about the end game. And I swear, if they messed this up too, I will slap the nearest dog. Okay, so the game is frustrating, backwards, and just not a very good time overall. But what about the end game? In the last game, I praised how the last few fights managed to provide a fair, yet difficult experience. Something very few fighting games manage to do even today. Now how does the sequel fare in this regard? Well, unlike the last game, Mortal Kombat 2 doesn't really have any special fights or anything of that caliber. The game doesn't even call any attention to the fact that you can fight yourself. My guess is that since the game has more characters, Midway didn't need to pad out the game's ending as much. After you face the last regular fighter on the ladder, you must face a question mark. Let me take a bit of a detour. You see, since the original Mortal Kombat games were initially arcade games, they have limited continues. Now, while I obviously find infinite continues to be a much more streamlined game design choice, I can look past limited continues if the game in question is designed around the fact that getting a game over means starting the whole game from the beginning again. I didn't criticize this in my last review because spamming moves was enough to defeat the bosses. In the lowest difficulty, at least. I bring this up here because the last few fights are garbage. Then again, what were you really expecting? You don't actually fight a question mark, though that would be interesting. If you win the last normal fight in the first 2 rounds, you get to fight a hidden character, Jade. She's just a green katana that moves way too fast to be reasonably beaten.
The game really wants to push a social justice message, doesn't it?
Well, this game was a few years ahead of its time, seeing as how one of the hardest characters to beat is a man who can suck. Speaking of which... Shang Tsung is a worse boss fight than the Time Eater. And this has nothing to do with Sonic, so now I'm even more mad. In the last game, he was fast, but not impossible to beat. Here, he's a million times harder, both because you can predict your moves before you even do them, and because of the stupid throwing mechanic. I brought up the limited continues thing here because I had to restart the game to get footage 3 times. The first 2 ended with Shang Tsung, and the third ended with the next asshole we're gonna talk about. I know that having infinite continues would have made the game a little easy, but this isn't challenge that comes from the player needing to observe and improve. This is challenge that comes from the factors outside of the player's control. Literally the definition of bullshit. It's frustrating to see the same backgrounds over and over again. It's annoying to constantly get hit by attacks you can't possibly dodge. It's atrocious to constantly lose all of your continues on one fight. And it's irritating to have to start the game all over because the game can predict the future and you can't. That's another thing. None of the victories in the game feel like you succeeded. They feel more like the game chose to let you win. You have to hope that the game feels like letting you pass. And most of the time, it doesn't. But after 2 game overs, I finally got past this insufferable boss fight. Now we can move on to... Bleh!
What?
I don't know, this next guy just has lips thicker than maple syrup.
Damn, boy, he's thick, boy!
Alright, enough old memes, let's just get started. This guy...
Why are you fighting a furry? I thought DeviantArt wasn't a thing until the 2010s.
I don't associate with tigers. No, but seriously, this fight is both hilarious and disappointing. This is Kentaro. And no, this is not America, don't catch you slipping now, Donald Glover. He is still the obligatory fight with the four-armed monster established in the first game by Goro. He shoots fireballs, moves slowly, and hits like a 10-ton train. The funny thing is that he launches you into the air like Apollo 11.
Brutality.
This fight is... intriguing. It's actually a fair fight. Sure, I got a game over the first time I fought him, but look at this footage. I managed to do quite a bit of damage to Kentaro before I died. His patterns can be avoided, and anything that might be a little bit harsh is properly telegraphed, like his high jump. If only I had enough continues to learn his pattern. Too bad I wasted them all on this old intestine. He can still throw you, unfortunately, but he moves so slowly that you can easily stay away from his forearms. Now I'm left wondering why every other fight in this game wasn't this well designed. They know how to make a good boss fight, and the developers have known that since the first game, yet this is the first time in this entire adventure where I can actually say I wasn't mad about losing. Your main way of losing to this guy is getting paranoid and losing focus, which is engaging. It's fair, challenging, engaging, and this is the first time that I can say any of those three things. And now, we must talk about Shao Kahn. Now I'm going to try getting the Shao Kahn one more time, and if I fail... Alright, you know what? Screw it. This is a double review now. Mortal Kombat 2 Unlimited is a fan hack of Mortal Kombat 2. Along with providing a perfect explanation of the plot through beginning cutscenes, the game also allows you to fight in the maps of both the first and second game. You can also play as any character in the game, including the hidden characters, Boob Saibutt, Jade, and Smoke. Now, while it doesn't bring back the minigames, it does combat the arcade syndrome in other ways. For one thing, expanding the map and character roster adds some variety to the gameplay. On top of that, the difficulty doesn't seem to be as unreasonably high for the lowest difficulty. Now that just leaves Shao Kahn. Wait a minute. This is a good final boss. And no, I'm not joking. Out of everything that this game has forgotten from the last one, I'm at least grateful that it didn't forget how to make any of the good boss fights. Well, besides Mr. Pride. Similar to Goro and Kentaro, Shao Kahn is bulky and strong, but moves slow enough for the player to learn his patterns and attack him. He throws spears that you can duck under if you're fast enough. He doesn't ever seem to throw you, at least not from my experience, and he often takes the time to taunt the player, which is cool both because it actually gives you a chance to attack him if you're doing poorly, and it shows off that he has the same voice acting as the announcer of the game. But Speedy, if the fight is designed that way, how is it climactic, or a proper final boss? Is there even any challenge? Well, first of all, I would much rather have a well-designed final boss than an incredibly cheap one. If anything, the fact that there's a 90s fighting game that doesn't have a cheap final boss is commendable. Second of all, this fight does feel pretty climactic, for a few reasons. You had to get past the toughest of the tough to get here, and Shao Kahn, in universe at least, is so powerful that even Raiden couldn't defeat him, and Raiden is an under-god. If you fail to defeat Shao Kahn, he will conquer Earthrealm and kill everyone that has ever known your name. Even if you ignore the story significance of this moment, which I can understand, I mean the game kind of ignores it as well, the boss itself is still challenging in a few ways. Shao Kahn doesn't throw you, but he does have this charge attack that doesn't seem to be dodgeable, which isn't good design, but he doesn't use it as much as the other characters use the throw attack. Just like the fight with El Tigre, if you get impatient, you will lose this fight plenty of times. For these reasons, and these raisins, I think that the fight with Shao Kahn is pretty good. I would ask Poopable Poop Poop about his opinion, but if he was beaten in an FPS by Elmo, it shouldn't surprise you that he couldn't reach Shao Kahn as well. Mortal Kombat 2 is just a longer and more frustrating version of Mortal Kombat 1.
Okay, it's not that simple.
If I'm being honest, I came into this game expecting to hate it. I'd played a little bit of it during my downtime at school since, they gave us these laptops that we could walk around with, and Sega's a free emulator and you don't have to download anything. And from what I had played before, I just did not like this game. Some of the reasons were listed in this review, and there were other tiny annoyances that really don't matter. And I was expecting every possible aspect of the game to suck when I sat down and tried reviewing it. And while there are plenty of things about it that do suck, there are a surprising amount of things that don't. The story, while being a little vague, is interesting, and it explains why the gameplay formula has stayed largely the same. The visual and auditory theming are consistent throughout the entire experience, which is kind of impressive. The music is fitting, The graphics and movements of the characters are smoother, and when you look past its flaws, the game still manages to capture the essence of Mortal Kombat and fighting games in general. Unfortunately, the game also fails to make any no-brainer changes to improve the overall experience or keep some of the qualities that saved the original. The fights are still repetitive, the throwing mechanic is really annoying, the lack of minigames is mind-boggling considering how much they helped the original game, the pause button still not being a thing is just ridiculous, and Shang Tsung is also ridiculous regardless of personal skills. You wanna know something weird? I talked to my father and stepmother over the phone about this whole review that I've been doing, and they both said that when they were kids in the 90s, this game was one of the biggest games, like, ever, actually. Every kid was playing this game, and every kid wanted to play it. It was one of the biggest things around. And, like, I'm wondering, let me get real for a second, but I'm wondering, why do mediocre or outright terrible things get so much adoration from the general public? And that doesn't just go for video games, that also goes for, like, music or films or things like that. Like, when you actually take the time to analyze things like video games or music, you come to realize that the more popular stuff tends to be on a lower level than the stuff that doesn't get as much attention, which is why the term underrated gem is a thing. So, can someone in the comments who was alive during the 90s and actually played this game, were you frustrated by it? Like, I'm genuinely wondering, why do mediocre or terrible things get so much adoration? Actually, no, wait. I do know the answer to that question, but I don't know how to answer that question in a way that doesn't come off as insulting to the general public. Regardless, Mortal Kombat 2 is a very mixed game. It's got some good aspects, some bad aspects, and honestly it's annoying to have to review a sequel and come up to the same conclusion as you did with the first game, if not a worse conclusion. Now, as for people I would recommend it to, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who has just gotten started with video games or fighting games. But if you're someone who's looking for a good challenge, or you're a really big fan of Mortal Kombat, then I can see you enjoying this, but for anyone else, you're not gonna find what you're looking for with this game. But hey, that's just what I think. What about you, Tropical Poptart? Tropical Poptart?
Hey, servant, we need to destroy him now.
But I want to review Mortal Kombat 3.
Follow my orders.
Fine. Speedy, what's that behind you? Aha! I got you now, you skinny dinny string bang motherfucker.
What is the meaning of this? ¿Qué? Porque estoy hablando el español.
What? Why isn't it working?
Yo no comprende por qué el Pop-Tart de Tropical es mal. How do I start this? I got it. Greetings, Earthlings. Speedy the Enderman here, and... why do I get the feeling that life is kind of repetitive?
You worthless bandit, destroy him now.
Where am I?
I can no longer detect his body. He is not in the city. That's good enough.
Why did you do this? I thought we were friends!
We only wanted what your absence would give us. We were never friends. And now, with you out of the picture, your city, the city that your people live in, is ours for the taking. You failed. Why would I ever be friends with you, you monster?
So, for these reviews, you only got me to do them because it would distract me.
Yes, for too long, the home of technology of your pitiful race has been isolated. Now, they're practically ours for the taking.
Oh. King Zonga was right. Humans can't be trusted.
Forget the king. We'll be the new rulers now, fiend.
Come on, man. I need to get enough money to build a plane so I can fly out of here. But where am I gonna get enough money to build a plane? I got it! The Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza for you and me! Hey Earthlings, I just wanted to talk with y'all again while the credits roll. This review took so long to get out, and I want to apologize for that right off the bat, because I was originally planning for the video to come out in December, and it ended up coming out in March. So, yeah. And I mean, there are reasons for that, like homework, moving, waiting for Tropical Poptart to record his lines, the editing process as a whole, finding time to edit when the house isn't, like, really noisy or anything like that. It took a while, and I'm sorry, but I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope the wait was worth it. A little bit. I don't know, was it worth it? But, yeah. Tropical Poptart, if you're watching this, then I want to thank you for helping me make this review. It was fun, you know, getting to talk about people hitting each other until they bleed. That's something you can do with friends at Christmas time, and family too. And if you're someone who liked Mortal Kombat, tell me in the comments below, what do you think of the game? Actually, no, that doesn't just include people who like Mortal Kombat. Like, if you like Mortal Kombat 2, do you dislike Mortal Kombat 2, what's your favorite game in the series, things like that. And if you liked Tropical Poptart in this video, go check out his channel. He mainly makes gaming content, so I'm sure if you watch my channel, then you should like the stuff he makes too. Now, you may have noticed that some of the music in the background of this video was actually pretty good, like orchestral even. And that's because I got some of the music in this video from bensound.com. Now, I said that in the intro, but I don't know what the rules of Bensound are precisely, so I just wanted to mention it again. If you're a content creator and you're looking for background music of some kind that's free, just go to bensound.com. They got some music that you can use. You just download it. It's easy. But, yeah. I've been Speedy the Enderman. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. Goodbye.